Hello everyone, and welcome to the Honda Pro Cycle Atlantic Challenge here at Atlantic Motorsport Park for the 5th race in our Liqui Moly Pro Sport Bike National Championship Series. I'm your series announcer, Frank Wood. Today's race is brought to you by Dalton Timmis Insurance, Honda, Magneti Marelli offered by Mopar, Drift, and Dunlop.
Sunday at Atlantic Motorsport Park, second straight day of action, but a little drier than it was yesterday for our 4th round as we head into round 5.
And a pleasant turn of events in the weather situation. When we came to the racetrack this morning, it was absolutely pouring. And puddles were gathering up, but as you can see, Colin, it's dried up considerably, and we do have a nice wind blowing as well to keep it dry, and no more rain in the forecast, which is a good news item indeed. Let's go on our warm-up lap, and then we'll line the guys up on in their proper qualifying positions and send them off in their 18-lap National Championship sport bike race.
Field set based on essentially fastest laps from yesterday's race, which of course was held in the rain, which leads to the odd surprise. For instance, Thomas Kazaz, our points leader and reigning champion, I believe is on the 2nd row for today's race. There you can see him. So he's 5th overall, which means he set the 5th fastest lap during yesterday's wet and red flag rain race shortened event.
Joseph Pulsifer, that's the local guy that was on the 121 bike that had that nasty crash in turn 2 yesterday. He'll be starting on the front row, and there's a shot from him looking back at, I believe that's Bill Jay on the number 68 bike that's following Pulsifer there. Here we are going up into turn number 8, and I think we're on board with Tommy Kazas just now with the Parts Canada, Yamaha Canada sponsored R6, our defending champion, number 1 plate holder, and he had a good run yesterday. We're looking for an improvement on it today. It wasn't a spectacular effort by any means.
Well, I think it's an interesting point in the championship with 3 races left to go. Kazaz has a pretty good lead. His rival is Mitch Card, who's had some struggles lately. So Kazaz probably not likely to yield a great deal in the way of fireworks. He needs to get the points and be careful. And very tricky here because several of the front runners, several of the people on the grid, almost everybody on the grid around him, isn't in contention for the championship. So he's got 2 things on his mind. They only have 1.
Right on. 3rd fastest qualifier was Sebastian Tremblay. He will start from the outside on turn number 1. Of course, fast qualifier and winner yesterday, Jacob Shaw O'Leary will start from pole position. They'll be looking at the Pro 6 cycle starting lights. There we go. The lights are starting to come on as they make their way down the ladder. There they are. All the lights are on. When those lights go off, we have a race on our hands, and we have just that. And it looks like a pretty good launch by the shaker, Sebastian Tremblay, and Tommy Kazas snuck in right behind him. Nice move by Kazas, and there's Mitch Card in 3rd spot.
Card really needed to get involved in this race. He had some trouble yesterday and didn't do great in the rain, and he is in the thick of it now.
Looked like he was going to challenge early. I thought he was going to sweep around the outside of Tommy Kazas there as they came through turn 2, up over turn 3 now, and Sebastian Tremblay on the DB Moto sponsored Kawasaki ZX6R has got the national championship race lead.
And I think when we read during the winter that Tremblay was moving from Superbike to the sport bike class, we expected to see this kind of performance. It's taken about half a season, but here he is leading on that Kawasaki Ninja. So we have a Kawasaki and then a couple of Yamahas and then a couple of Hondas.
Well, and Tremblay has yet to score a pro win in either Superbike or sport bike racing, so you might comment that he is getting near the past due date, but looks like he's got a good ride on his hands just now. We're going through the carousel of 8, 9, and 10, and that'll bring us up the hill. Up into turn number 11 and right past the Pro Cycle Control Tower here at Atlantic Motorsport Park. Looking back at the champion, Tommy Kazas in chase, and Mitch Card is definitely in this race. There's Jacob Shaw O'Leary now as he joins the top 4, and they steam down in through turn 1 on lap number 2. O'Leary really wide in turn 1 there.
Well, O'Leary has a lot of speed in 1, maybe more than anyone in any of the classes, but the problem is a pass there is very difficult, and it tends to happen on the inside, not the outside. And I think what happens is he winds up drifting wide to not run into the guy he's trying to pass, and then you lose some time and you have to regroup and start again. We saw that a couple of times yesterday, but Shaw O'Leary was on pole in terms of lap time yesterday. He won in the rain yesterday, and he's coming off a concussion, has missed most of the season, but we're expecting him to work his way closer to the front than fourth.
Tough boy. He bounced back from that nasty crash and concussion that he had at one of the regional races down here at Atlantic Motorsport Park. And this, in fact, is his first outing since that mishap.
Nice tall shot of the boys working it through the S's, and you can see Kazaz dangling his foot there and having a pretty good look at Tremblay, giving it a thought into the carousel. Another place that you can pass, but it isn't going to be easy. And Tremblay's one of those guys who rides a wide bike. He's not blocking, but he has good entrance speed, and so he's hard to pick off on the brakes.
Did I ever tell you how much I like those drift camera shots? Awesome stuff. Down into turn one we go right now. Jacob Shaw O'Leary, rather, and keep throwing in an Austin there. Of course, his older brother raced with us for years. This is the younger version of the O'Leary brothers, Jacob Shaw O'Leary, and he's putting a good charge on in a solid fourth position. And this may be calculated, Colin. He may be looking for a little bit of a toe and make his way up into a podium position.
Well, I doubt that he's happy in fourth, but the pace is good, and I don't think anyone thought that Tremblay would be the one setting that good pace. Normally, he's a sort of a second or third and see what pans out, play a little conservative, but this is a different way of going at it, and maybe it's just because he got the good start and he has the confidence to hit his marks and make it hard for the other guys to pass him. This isn't the easiest track to pass, but of course he's not a local, and typically the locals are leading the 600 race.
Look at this beautiful footage here, and let's remember also that the number 76 rider Louis Rafa is running in fifth spot right now. We did get a glimpse of him, and if he can close the gap, we may have a 5-horse race here. On
board with Kazaz coming up the hill onto the front straight to put another lap in the books. Have a really good look at Tremblay's brand new RST leathers. Nice to see him in a new suit because he was looking a little rough around the edges.
His previous suits had done the job, let's put it that way.
They had earned their keep, that is correct.
Indeed. Card is hanging in here really strong in this race, Colin. He's right in behind the national champion. As you mentioned, these guys have had a bit of a rivalry going on throughout the 2018 season thus far.
A year ago at Shubenacadie in the dry on Sunday, Card and Kazas put on one heck of a battle, one of the most entertaining races we've seen. But, of course, that didn't end well for Card.
Casas moving in on the back end of Tremblay, coming down off of turn 4. He's very strong in that region of the racetrack. Oh, man, we're starting to bunch up now. We've got a really good race happening here as Jacob Shaw O'Leary having a good, hard look at Mitch Card, and he looks like he might be trying to perhaps launch an attack on him. Tommy Casas now right in behind Shaker Sebastian Tremblay as they go up through the carousel here. The combination corners, Colin, of 8, 9, and 10.
And I think O'Leary is trying to find something that's going to work, and he has looked in the usual spots, and okay, this time up the inside, this is a much better bet.
Woohoo! Right up alongside Mitch Card. He had the back end wagging a bit, but it looks like Card is holding him up. No! Jacob Shaw O'Leary has moved up into third spot.
That's what you call pushing him off the puck, right? You get underneath, and there's only so much room, and the guy on the outside ends up giving way because he's not confident where he's going to wind up, and he's running out of territory.
Yeah, you get a little intimidated in a situation like that, no doubt. And now Card slipping back a bit there. Now he's probably about 3 or 4. He'll make that up, no doubt. Tommy Cass is just about running into the back end, and again at this same section of the racetrack, so it's obvious that the shaker Sebastian Tremblay is not maintaining the same pace as what Tommy Casas has coming down off of turn 4. Jacob Shaw O'Leary swinging out to riders right there, and perhaps, no, I thought he was closing up on Tommy Casas.
Well, he's having a look, and we've seen a lot of careful riding. Casas typically hasn't been pushing for the pass so far this weekend because he's worried about the points. O'Leary is not in that position. He has no points until yesterday when he won his first career national, so the situation with him is all out, and he's looking all the time trying to figure out what's going to work. Now, of course, when he races here at the Society of ARL Regional Series, not a lot of people running his low 109 lap time as he goes wide again, looking for a way past TV Tommy.
At times he's overlapping. Look at that. His front wheel is overlapping Tommy Casas' rear wheel, and he's moving out to the side, obviously to avoid contact, but obviously it's sending a message to our national champion as well, is that you may want to move over in a minute here, Tommy.
Well, no one's moving over. That's just not going to happen at the pro level at the front of a national race. And it's a great thing that we see Shaw O'Leary pushing the way he is, but it's not, his better entrance speed is not easily converted, and there you can see that's a weird place to look, and it's almost impossible to pass around here.
Well, you hear a lot of the riders talking about passing on Atlantic Motorsport Park, and it is a tough track to make a pass on. Even Jordan Zoke was talking about that after the practice sessions or after qualifying, I should say, in Dalton Timmins Insurance, qualifying for Superbike on Friday. There is Jacob Shaw O'Leary again. Looked like he he was going to take it outside line and maybe square it up and move it onto the inside on Tommy Casas, but he hasn't done anything yet. He's gone hunting it, but hasn't made his decision. Beautiful shot of the O'Leary Brothers Racing Pro Cycle sponsored Honda CBR 600RR of O'Leary.
Down the hill on the brakes, one of O'Leary's strongest spots, swings
right
around Tommy.
The outside. Nope.
And we see O'Leary carrying more speed than anybody else. He and probably Trevor Daly are the two most entertaining riders in the paddock around this track, because they're not afraid to attack when everyone else is using a little bit of caution, but it doesn't always make for an easy pass. And of course, at least unlike Daly, we've pretty much had Shaw O'Leary on the race surface so far this weekend.
Daly's had a couple of off-track excursions, kept it upright though. So
yeah, he's gone to some places where almost nobody goes. However, Mitch Card's done it too, so there you go.
I was watching Jacob Shaw O'Leary coming out of turn 3, and he's looking way ahead. He's got his head tilted over. He's looking way down over the lump into turn number 4.
And as we watch the clinic of Shaw O'Leary attempting to complete a pass on our reigning national champion, we got to mention that this is just unbelievable stuff. We got to mention Tremblay isn't making any mistakes. You can see him picking up on the fat part of the tire, getting the drive, and he is riding in a way that makes him very hard to pass. And I don't mean he's blocking. I mean, wow, look at that. No TC on these bikes, so that's just putting the power down over the crest of the hill, pulling a wheelie, and that's traction control by Shaw O'Leary.
Yeah, Jacob Shaw O'Leary with a handful of Honda horsepower in chase of that Yamaha. Feature now, we've got a Kawasaki running up front, Yamaha running in second, and a Honda in third.
Yeah, so yeah, Kawasaki, then Yamaha, the reigning champion, then a Honda, then another Yamaha, and of course the other Yamaha is Card, who has been a front runner, won at Grand Bend, and is certainly considered a favorite. And we're heading next to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, where Card is almost unstoppable on that Fast Company Yamaha.
And if we wish to mention more brand representation here, let's touch on Louis Rafa on the NGK Sparkplug sponsored Honda CBR 600RR. He's running in 5th spot right now, out of the sight line, but nonetheless holding a top 5 position.
We run these bikes in the dyno. We know a lot about the horsepower. There's lots of discussion about who has what, but it's interesting along the back straight there really doesn't seem to be anything between these top few bikes over the course of this part of the season to this point in the season. Really, it's been Card who's demonstrated the ultimate power, but that doesn't seem to be a particular factor. His bike isn't slow, but it doesn't look demonstratively fast as Shaw O'Leary on that wide line, and I'm not sure that it leads anywhere.
Holy lordy. It does allow him not to run into Tommy Casas, though.
Yeah, I wonder that he's just wearing himself out, because it's got to be pretty stressful. He's had some excitement. He's had more excitement than anyone else. He can probably handle it, but he uses way more of the track, and he, like I said, is very exciting. But it's got to be a little nerve-wracking. And of course, in terms of muscle memory, he's the guy who just hasn't been racing this season.
And of course, aside from this season, though, Colin, he has had a lot of saddle time on this racetrack. He began his racing career right at Atlantic Motorsport Park, and of course, developed his skills. Oh man, big wobble there by O'Leary. Holy cow, I'm not sure what happened there, but that's the first time we've seen that. That was coming off the roller coaster, and he got into one of them handlebar shakes.
Well, but TV Tommy didn't cut down, didn't block, didn't do anything, just ran it in hard. And this is 2018 Tommy Casas, and what we're seeing is a guy who's learned to win races, who's learned to win championships, who may not have the fastest bike, but he's getting everything out of that R6, and he's riding with the confidence that we see from top guns, from reigning champions. And of course, something we haven't talked about in this episode of Liqui Moly Pro Sport Bike is we're all sort of auditioning to race superbikes, except for Tremblay, who quit Superbike to come to this class.
Yeah. Most unusual. We normally see them going from sport bike up to superbike. In fact, we've talked a number of times about the possibility of Tommy Casas getting on a superbike, and rumor has it that he may have one before the end of this year, but again, we'll see how that plays out.
Well, he's got to go to Motorsport and win a title too, right?
Yeah.
So that's plenty of pressure without the superbike question.
Yeah, very, very good point. Down off of turn number 5 now, the left-hand, only 2 left-hand corners on this race course, so the right side of those Dunlop slicks getting a big workout there. Tommy had a bit of a wobble there as well, so I think there must be a series of bumps coming off the roller coaster that is setting that up.
Yeah, it's parts of this track haven't been paved since it opened in '74, so there are some bumps, and this is just remarkable.
Oh, this is beautiful. O'Leary absolutely mirroring Tommy Casas right exactly beside him like a shadow. Here we are again looking back at Jacob Shaw O'Leary onto the front straightaway. That shot there, Colin, was from the top of the tower there, the Pro Cycle Control Tower here at turn 11, just as they come onto the front straightaway. And that is a dramatic shot as they swing in under the camera.
And here we see Tremblay once again, no mistakes, hitting the exact same line time over after time, and this is what it takes to win a race. And if he can hang on, and I don't know if he can, this is the kind of pressure that most people cannot take throughout an event. Normally something gives, or there's a shakeup or an incident, and he is looking for that first national victory. The two riders behind him have won, and the third guy in this shot won yesterday for the first time.
Well, let's remember the shaker, Sebastian Tremblay, is a veteran. He's been around our sport for quite some time, and from my observations thus far in this race, and we are past the halfway mark, he's been riding on dimes. He is right on his mark each and every time, and if they're going to find a way around him, they're going to have to push him. And Tommy Casas looked like he had just that in mind. If he can sneak in there going into 8 and give the thing a little bit of a park, he may be able to force Tremblay off his line and capture first position. But meanwhile, he's got to do just that. Look at this. O'Leary, Casas, again perfectly side by side on the front straightaway there for a moment as they chase down the shaker down into turn number 1 and close dramatically on him now.
So Tommy is looking for Tremblay to make the smallest mistake, to give him a little fingernail hold on that cliff to make the next step up. And the problem is Tremblay isn't making any mistakes.
No, he's not.
There's no easy pass, and Kazaz has to keep track of the points. He's leading the championship. He has the number 1 plate, and the pressure is really double for him in this situation.
Beautiful stuff. Far be it for me to criticize, but it seems to me that Shaw O'Leary may be defeating his own cause here. Those wide lines are making him have to go a longer distance than the riders in front of him.
Wow, look at that. Just shaking the front end of that Honda. And of course, the worry always is if you have a really big tank slapper that you knock those pads back in the caliper and you start up the hill through turn 7 and you don't have the brakes you think you're going to have. And it doesn't happen often, and it doesn't happen like it used to in the old days, but it is a big risk. And when you see the bike shaking like that on the back straight, and by the way, at this track, the bikes are never straight up and down. They are always turning at least a little bit, and there's no part of this track that's flat. This is an unbelievably difficult track, and takes, Shaw O'Leary. Wow, that's look at
this now, just about off the racetrack that time around. Wow.
Yeah, he had a moment on the brakes there, and probably if he didn't have the experience at Atlantic Motorsport Park, he would have crashed, right? He used a lot of extra track. That wasn't, we've been talking about him on wide lines, but that was not a line, that was a save. But look at this. This is the biggest gap we've seen, and probably he'll close it right up because he's got the speed. It's the pass that's so hard to do.
That lump between turns 3 and turn 4, just about launching the bikes up in the air. You can see them come up and over that roll, and the front end's getting very light as they head into turn 4. And then, of course,
hey,
they're
the
off
sun's out, Frank.
Wow, it's sunny today. They get into that right-hander and bank it over after that, heading down into 4, and then swing it back over to the one of 2 left-hand corners. They just went through there in turn number 5.
Good look through the carousel, one of the signature turns here, and probably one of the places that's had the most misadventure in the history of the series. Lots of famous people have come unglued in that carousel. And then this crazy run down the front straight, which is not particularly straight and certainly not flat.
From arriving here at Atlantic Motorsport Park on Thursday as we got ready for the qualifying sessions on Friday, I had to pass comment. Colin, the organizers here have done a splendid job in grooming this place. It looks more like a golf course than a racetrack. Beautiful job they've done on it. Now we're looking back again at Tommy Casas in pursuit of this shaker, Sebastian Tremblay, and he is still holding them off. He is running a brilliant race here.
And it's funny, when you look at his bike, it is not as busy under him as for the other two. And 3 different bikes, 3 different setups, all the same Dunlop tires. But honestly, Tremblay's bike looks easier to ride.
Well, we've been looking back at Tommy Casas and Jacob Shaw O'Leary, and we've seen a couple of head shakes, of course. We were on board with Sebastian Tremblay to do just that, but the problem is we can't observe Tremblay because there's nobody in front of him.
Well, also, easier to ride is not easy to ride, right? It's a lot of work, and Tremblay is working hard, but he is not making mistakes at all, and he's famous for how smooth he is, how easy he is with his throttle, and I don't mean he's not aggressive. I mean he's very studied in his approach, and that approach suits this bike very well.
Working lap number 15 as the riders again steaming down into turn number 2. That is a very sharp corner. Now, we don't see it so much on camera, but that's quite an uphill climb going up into turn number 3 where they are right now.
Right, and then it levels off here, so you got to get the front end settled under you before you can commit to that turn. And of course, that's what caught Mitch Card out last year when he performed one of the more spectacular departures from a race.
Looking once more as Tommy Kazas. I'm not sure that Tommy has any intentions of passing Tremblay. He may be just waiting for him to make a mistake, but he doesn't seem to be over aggressive. And of course, as we're approaching the end of the season now, he is starting to think championship and think points and ride accordingly.
Well, I think every racer absolutely intends to pass the person in front because they know that they are absolutely the better rider. But the problem is it has to be a clear pass. He can't afford to get connected with Tremblay and risk any kind of tumble.
O'Leary coming up on Kazas once more. If anybody's going to launch a pass here, I would suggest it's going to be Jacob Shaw O'Leary, as he is riding aggressively.
No, and he looks like a guy who's not going to take no for an answer, but here we go on the outside again on 1.
He was perfectly alongside the national champion, Tommy Kazas, just for a moment there at any rate, coming into 1. Down into 2 once more. The shaker Sebastian Tremblay and the DB Moto sponsored Kawasaki, and man, he's running a great race. This is a career ride, really it is, for Sebastian Tremblay.
But the funny thing is, when you watch Shaw O'Leary, and he's had a couple of moments and he's had to make up a little bit of time, and I think he's turning the fastest laps of the race in this drift camera, particularly with Shaw O'Leary on that wide line, fills the screen with brightly decorated motorcycles and almost seems unreal in terms of its presentation.
And again, Jacob seems to be, I don't think this is the correct phrase perhaps, but almost shooting himself in the foot with those lines.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he has the pace to win this race, but he doesn't seem to be able to make a pass work. And look at this, is a little closer into the carousel for him than he has been.
There again, Jacob Shaw O'Leary swings out, and I think, as I commented earlier, more to avoid contact with Tommy Kazas than to actually try to make a pass. There he is doing it again, just tipping that front wheel off to the side to make sure there's no contact between front and rear.
Well, everybody's desperately hoping that the guy in front's going to make a mistake, and the guy at the ultimate.
Look at this!
Now, see, that wasn't even the wildest trip he's had through turn 1.
Holy lordy, that downhill turn number 1, we were comparing that to the corkscrew at Laguna Seca. That might be a bit of a stretch, but nonetheless, it is a bit of a drop coming off at turn number 1 down into 2. Less than 2 laps to go now. Once more into turn number 4, and again a drop off there. Elevation changes here, quite dramatic here at Atlantic Motorsport Park, and part of the great challenge of this race course, aside from the fact of the pavement that you mentioned, and of course, as we can see in numerous occasions here, it is a little bit rough and bumpy. Some people have called it a paved motocross track.
And we see here that everybody seems to be in good shape tire-wise. Typically this season, we've seen a lot of different tires work, particularly in the very hot conditions we've had, so there's more choice for the riders. A little cooler today, more overcast, the track's not holding as much heat. So I can't help at this juncture, as far as we've got almost to the end of the race, maybe Tremblay made a cagey tire choice.
O'Leary picking up the front wheel on that Pro Cycle Honda and carrying it virtually halfway down the front straightaway, and again way wide in turn number 1. We are now on the last lap. This is it. So Tremblay now finds himself in a pressure cooker. He knows full well he's being followed, and he's being followed closely, and he's going to have to be very cautious and careful and yet maintain this high speed throughout this final lap.
Yeah, I don't think cautious and careful is going to win this one. I don't think that's what he's been doing. He's seen his pit board every lap with +0, so he knows they're there. There's times when he can hear them.
Well, I don't think he's going to nurse it home. He's going to have to really stay on the gas, obviously, to keep these 2 youngsters in behind him. He is the veteran here. As we mentioned, he's had a ton of experience on Superbikes, and he has stood on the podium in regional races and won races in regional races. And I think he's been on a pro podium now and again in CSBK racing, but it's been a long time, and we certainly have not seen him win a race. And it looks like for all the world that he may be on his way to do just that as they are coming down. Whoa. Tommy Kazas. Jacob Shaw O'Leary was off the racetrack.
Everybody decided to go for it in the last turn, and they used pretty much the entire racetrack, and you can't help but think that Tremblay might have had it a little tougher if those two hadn't gone quite so crazy with 1 turn to go.
And the Shaker has done it. Sebastian Tremblay has just recorded his first national championship pro class win on that Kawasaki. And Tommy Kazis and Jacob Shaw O'Leary both acknowledging one another and waving to the crowd. And there is a great shot of Tremblay with that checkered flag.
Well, for most of the race, we had a 3-shot with 2 national winners, but now we have 3 from those shots because Tremblay has finally done it and taken the win. Mitch Card fading in 4th after a really good performance early. Then we look at the rest of our field, and worth mentioning that Bilge, who was a star in the rain yesterday, 8th on his Kawasaki today, and Coelho, who looked so good in the rain early yesterday, in 9th, and he will not be satisfied with that.
I'd like to mention Demeray as well, Samuel Demeray, the pro rookie who did such a splendid job on the number 17 Kawasaki. And there is the number 24 Kawasaki with the Shaker on board. And this was a very popular win. I don't know if you heard it, Colin, but the crowd was very boisterous when Tremblay made that pass for the race lead.
Let's head down to our Liqui Moly Pro Sport Bike podium with our first-time winner and our announcer, Frank Wood.
Finishing in 3rd spot, Jacob Shaw O'Leary. Let's talk about your race.
Yeah, Frank, that was a crazy race. We left it all out there. Not the position I wanted to be in. I definitely wanted to be up on the top of the box again, but these guys were just riding really, really well today, and I did everything I could do to get by them. This is such a hard track to pass, especially with guys with the experience these guys have. So just super pumped to be up on the podium again. First weekend back at a national, so I can't be too disappointed in how the team did. It's amazing.
Well said. Jacob Shaw O'Leary capturing 3rd spot in the Liqui Moly Pro Sport Bike race. Now over to the defending champion, who on this day has brought his Yamaha home in 2nd spot. Tommy, talk to us.
Yeah, that was the plan, Frank. We had to start from the 2nd row today, and luckily I got a good launch and got in behind Sebastian. He was riding really, really awesome, and I started him for a little, see where I could gain a pass on him. There was a couple spots where he was faster and a couple of spots where I would gain on him. But near the end, we started all to fatigue, I'm expecting, but it was a little too risky for me to try a pass, and Sebastian was riding really, really well, so well-deserved win for him, and we brought it home safely for the championship, which is the bigger picture for us. And we also just learned that each one of us had the different compound Dunlop on there, which is really, really cool to hear about. Just shows how great of a tire Dunlop are. And yeah, it was a good race, and looking forward to CTMP.
Ladies and gentlemen, your champion, defending champion and 2nd place finisher in this contest, Thomas Casas. Now up to the top step, and my congratulations to the Shaker, Sebastian Tremblay, your first professional win and another victory for Kawasaki on this day.
Yeah, it's really awesome to win a race, a national. I've won a couple of regional and stuff like that, but a national, it's very, very difficult. These guys are very, very fast. So I took the gamble on a super soft in the rear and tried to get away at the front for the first couple of laps, but it didn't work. So it was very difficult for me at the end to try to manage my tire, but it was a pretty clean race. Nobody did anything crazy, so no, it was pretty good.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is your podium. Finishing in 3rd spot, Jacob Shaw O'Leary on the Honda. Tommy Casas finishing 2nd on the Yamaha, and 1st place to Kawasaki rider, the Shaker, Sebastian Tremblay.
And as we have a look at the points in Liqui Moly Pro Sport Bike with 5 races done and 2 to go at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, Thomas Kazaz in a familiar position where he has to go to Mosport and be careful, but he has almost a race in hand. Mitch Card starting to fade, Tremblay on the move up, Demeray, rookie pro, what a great effort there. Louis Raffis still doing well with his Honda, and then we look at Hornblower, who did not attend but will probably be back at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park and has previously run in the battle for the lead. And let's not forget Shaw O'Leary. Yeah. He was on the podium there last year.
Yeah. And O'Leary, with only 2 rides to his credit this year, already in 7th position. That wraps it up, Colin, from Atlantic Motorsport Park. The next stop on the tour, of course, will be at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, August 10th through the 12th. And on behalf of the entire CSBK crew, we thank you for joining us on this day, and we'll look forward to broadcasting to you from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Today's race is brought to you by Dalton Timmis Insurance, Honda, Magneti Morelli offered by Mopar, Drift, and Dunlop.